There's a moment every foreigner in Vietnam experiences. You can't plan for it. You can't predict exactly when it happens. But one day, you're sitting at a plastic stool on the sidewalk, eating a bowl of bún bò at 7 in the morning, sweating through your shirt before 8 a.m. And you think to yourself, this is just normal now. Not exciting, not shocking, not uncomfortable, just normal. And that's when you know. You've stopped being a tourist. You've started actually living here. In part 1 of this series, we talked about the things that shock foreigners in Vietnam after the first month. The traffic, the heat, the noise, the food culture. If you haven't watched that one yet, go check it out after this. But today, we're going deeper. Because there's a big difference between being shocked by Vietnam and actually adapting to it. 6 months in, the experience changes completely. The things that used to overwhelm you start to feel like background. The things that confused you start to make sense. And a few things that annoyed you, you actually start to miss them when you leave. So here are 12 things foreigners completely stop being shocked by after 6 months in Vietnam. Number 1. Traffic and the art of crossing the street. Let's start with the one thing that terrifies every single foreigner when they first arrive. The traffic. In your first week, crossing a busy street in Hanoi or Ho Chi Minh City feels like a near-death experience. You stand at the curb, you watch the motorbikes coming from every direction, and you genuinely wonder, how does anyone survive this city? But here's what most people don't realize in the beginning. Vietnamese traffic isn't chaos. It's a system. It's a fluid, unwritten system. But it works. The key is that traffic flows around you, not into you. You walk slowly. You stay consistent. You don't stop suddenly. And the motorbikes adjust. 6 months in, you don't think about it anymore. You step off the curb. You move at a steady pace. And you make it across every single time. In fact, most long-term expats say the same thing. They actually start to find it stressful to go back home and stand at a traffic light waiting for a signal. Vietnam's traffic teaches you to be present. And that, for most foreigners, is a permanent change. Number 2. Waking up to the sounds of the city. Your first week in Vietnam, the noise wakes you up. The neighborhood loudspeaker goes off at 6 a.m. Motorbikes start honking. The lady selling banh mi rolls past your window calling out her prices. And you think, how does anyone sleep here? 6 months later, you sleep right through all of it. Not because you've given up, but because your brain has learned to categorize it as home sounds. This is actually a well-documented part of cultural adaptation. The sounds that once registered as alarms now register as background. Expats in Hanoi often say the mornings feel alive in a way that no other city does. The city has a rhythm, and once you lock into it, it doesn't bother you anymore. In fact, a lot of foreigners who move back to quieter countries say they actually miss it. The silence feels too empty. Number 3. Personal questions from strangers. This one surprises almost every Western expat. A Vietnamese person you just met, a coworker, a neighbor, someone at a coffee shop, looks at you and asks, "How old are you? Are you married? How much do you make? Have you gained weight?" In Western culture, these questions are deeply personal. You don't ask someone's salary. You don't comment on someone's body. So, in month 1, you don't know how to respond. You laugh nervously. You give a vague answer. You feel a little judged. But here's what you learn after 6 months. In Vietnamese culture, these questions aren't rude. They're the opposite. Asking about your age, your family, your weight, it's a way of showing that someone cares enough to notice you. It's connection, not criticism. Once you understand that, you stop being shocked. You start answering naturally. And sometimes, you even start asking the same questions back. Number 4. Eating rice, PHO, or buns for breakfast. In your home country, breakfast probably looked a certain way. Toast, cereal, coffee, eggs, whatever your routine was. The first time someone in Vietnam suggests pho for breakfast, you might raise an eyebrow. Soup? At 7 a.m.? But give it a few weeks. Because after 6 months in Vietnam, you're the one suggesting it. A bowl of pho bo with fresh herbs and a squeeze of lime. Bun bo hue with that deep, spicy broth. Bun mi from the corner cart for about 25,000 dong. Just over $1. Street food breakfast in Vietnam isn't just cheap. It's genuinely one of the best meals of the day. A sit-down street breakfast usually costs between 30,000 and 60,000 VND. That's roughly $1.20 to $2.40. After 6 months, your whole idea of what breakfast should be has changed. And you realize the Vietnamese had it right the whole time. Number 5. Sweating constantly. Nobody warns you about this enough before you come to Vietnam. The heat is one thing, but the humidity is something else entirely. In your first few weeks, you step outside and feel physically uncomfortable within minutes. You sweat through shirts, you carry towels, you drink water constantly, and you wonder, will I ever adjust to this? Here's the honest answer. Not completely. Vietnam is hot. It stays hot. The South barely has a cool season. But here's what changes after 6 months. You stop fighting it. You dress for it. Lighter fabrics, looser fits. You schedule your outdoor time smarter, early morning, or after sunset. You find the best air-conditioned coffee shops in your neighborhood, and you stop being surprised every time you sweat through your shirt. It's not comfortable, but it becomes part of the rhythm. Most long-term expats in Ho Chi Minh City say the same thing. The heat never fully goes away, but the stress about the heat does. Number 6. Knowing the real price of everything. In your first month in Vietnam, you're probably overpaying for things. Not because people are necessarily trying to scam you, but because you don't know the local price yet. A ex-Yom driver sees a foreigner and quotes double. A market vendor sees you hesitate and holds the price firm. A tourist area coffee shop charges expat prices. 6 months in, that changes completely. You know what a bowl of bun cha should cost. You know what a fair grab price looks like before you accept the ride. You know which markets have fixed prices and which ones expect negotiation. You stop being the confused foreigner and start being the person who confidently says, "Dat quoi? That's too expensive." And the vendor smiles, because they know you figured it out. Number 7. The unwritten rules of Vietnamese coffee culture. Vietnamese coffee shops aren't just places to get coffee. They're places to sit for 3 hours without anyone asking you to leave. They're places where Wi-Fi is strong, the music isn't too loud, and a café suada costs about 25,000 to 35,000 VND, roughly $1 to $1.50. In month 1, you're fascinated by the coffee, the Vietnamese drip filter, the condensed milk, the ice. By month 6, the coffee shop is your second office. You know your neighborhood spots. You know which ones open at 6 a.m. You know which corners have the best light for working. This is a uniquely Vietnamese thing. The cafe is a social space, a workspace, and a quiet retreat, all at once. And once you've settled into that culture, going back to a place where you're expected to buy a coffee every 45 minutes feels genuinely exhausting. Number 8. Directness about appearance. We touched on personal questions earlier, but this one deserves its own moment. Vietnamese culture is direct about physical appearance in ways most Westerners aren't prepared for. You come back from a holiday weekend, and a coworker says, "You look bigger. Did you eat a lot?" You change your hair, and your landlord says, "That doesn't look as good as before. You haven't slept well." And someone you barely know says, "You look tired. Are you sick?" In the West, this would feel rude. But in Vietnam, it's often coming from a place of genuine observation and care. It's not about judgment. It's about noticing, being seen. 6 months in, you stop taking it personally. You start hearing it for what it is, someone paying attention. And honestly, once you stop being defensive about it, some of those observations are actually useful. Number 9. Living without a car. In many Western countries, a car is a basic adult requirement. Not in Vietnam. Vietnam runs on motorbikes. With over 70 million registered motorbikes nationally, the country is built around two-wheel transportation. In month one, this feels limiting. No car means no big grocery runs, no road trips, no sense of independence. But 6 months in, most expats have fully adapted. They've either bought a motorbike or they rely entirely on Grab. A Grab motorbike ride across the city often costs between $1 and $3. Monthly transportation costs for many expats stay around $40 to $80. Compare that to car ownership back home. Insurance, gas, parking. Suddenly, the motorbike life doesn't feel like a compromise. It feels like a feature. Number 10. The cash economy and flexible systems. Vietnam is still a heavily cash-based economy. Yes, QR code payments and apps like Momo and ZaloPay are growing fast. But in month one, foreigners are constantly caught off guard. The restaurant doesn't take cards. The landlord only accepts cash. The market stall has no terminal. And systems in general feel more flexible. Appointments are suggestions. Schedules shift. Plans change. By month 6, you've adapted. You always carry cash. You've downloaded local payment apps. You've stopped expecting things to run on a strict timeline. And here's what's interesting. A lot of long-term expats say this flexibility is one of the things they like most about Vietnam. There's less rigidity, less bureaucratic friction. Things get figured out, just not always the way you expected. Number 11. The noise of neighborhood karaoke. If you've spent any time in a Vietnamese residential neighborhood, you know what this is. It's 9 p.m. on a Tuesday, and someone 3 houses down is singing karaoke, loudly, with full echo effects. In month 1, this feels unbelievable. How is this allowed? How does anyone tolerate this? 6 months in, most expats have made their peace with it. You know which nights it usually happens. You've bought earplugs for the truly ambitious sessions. And honestly, sometimes the music isn't even that bad. Karaoke in Vietnam isn't just entertainment. It's communal. It's cultural. It's how people celebrate, grieve, relax, and connect. Once you understand what it means, the noise starts to feel different. Less like an intrusion, more like the sound of people being happy. Number 12. Becoming the one who explains Vietnam. This is the one that tells you everything. You're at a cafe, and you meet someone who just arrived in Vietnam. They ask about the traffic, what to eat for breakfast, why strangers keep commenting on their appearance, whether it's safe to cross the road, and you realize you know the answers. Not just the surface-level answers, the real ones. You know how to cross the street. You know which street food stalls are good and which to avoid. You know the personal questions aren't rude. You know what a fair price looks like. You know that the chaos isn't chaos. It's a different kind of order. That's the moment. 6 months in Vietnam doesn't make you an expert, but it makes you someone who understands. And that's a completely different experience from just visiting. So those are 12 things foreigners completely stop being shocked by after 6 months in Vietnam. The traffic, the morning noise, the personal questions, the heat, the food, the coffee shops, the directness, the cash economy, the karaoke nights, living without a car, and finally, becoming the person who helps someone else make sense of it all. Here's the thing no one tells you before you come. Vietnam doesn't get easier exactly. It gets more familiar. And familiar over time starts to feel like home. If you're just arriving, give it time. If you're already 6 months in, you probably recognized yourself in most of this list. And if you're past the 1-year mark and want part 3, drop a comment below and tell me which thing on this list hit closest to home for you. And what's the one thing that still surprises you even now? I'll see you in the next one.